In the year 2035, a corporate power will rule our nation with terror. Using a secret army of synthetic humans, they will destroy all who oppose them. But a small outpost of rebels will fight their killing machines. By reviving a weapon from their past, they will wage the final battle for our future. Crash and Burn.
Now available on video cassette.
It's just good stuff right there, boys. Salutations, fellow idiots. Welcome back to yet another episode of that Nocturnal Emissions, baby. We are once again diving into the Full Moon filmography with the fourth film in our Full Moon journey here. We're once again joined by Jester Mikey. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Mo? Hello, everybody. Hello there.
And of course, we are joined by Mason Egan, aka Megan. And today we're going to be talking about the film debut of his namesake. What's up, my dude?
I think it's supposed to be Megan, but you said me. But let's keep the joke. All right, let's tell. Hey, how's it going? Glad to be here.
No, it's never going to die, dude. If we ever get t-shirts made for this, we're going to get the Megan logo like from that robot movie, but it'll just be you down there. Yeah, I think we need them. I would rock that thing all the time. I'm doing pretty good as well. Extra hyped to talk about this film today. It is, I guess, new to me classic when it comes to Full Moon flicks. We'll talk about that once we get into the first impressions here. We do need to do a quick tale of the tape, though, and then we'll do the round table thing. These guys can talk about their history with the film. I'll do the same and all that. But Crash and Burn was written by J.S. Cardone, who helmed our last Full Moon project that we took a look at, Shadow Zone. It was directed by Charles Band. It was produced by Dave Dakota and John Schuweiler. It stars Paul Gannis, Megan Ward, Jack McGee, and Eva LaRue, amongst others. It's got cinematography by Mac Alberg, which did he shoot the last one we watched? I don't know. Mac shot a lot of Full Moon stuff, but I feel like at least one of the two of the ones that we just talked about he did.
I think it might be Shadow Zone.
I think you might be right. It was edited by Ted Nicolau, who I do not think this is the first editing job we've seen from him while discussing these. It's got music by Richard Band. Once again, it was distributed by Paramount Home Video and has a cool, crisp runtime of 85 minutes. Pretty dope poster art there that definitely falsely advertises the involvement of that robot, but I'm fine with it. I don't know about you guys. Mason, what was your first exposure to Crash and Burn? What's kind of your history with it? What are your general first impressions, my friend?
Well, basically, kind of my first exposure to Crash and Burn was basically when I got that Full Moon archive box set that they made like back in the early 2000s that featured a lot of classic films, and Crash and Burn was actually one of them. I was actually kind of, when I first looked at the cover, I thought like it sort of like a giant robot type movie, but it still, when I first had, was kind of a little disappointed, but still the story itself still was kind of interesting with sort of like the crazy android aspect, which is really the more selling point of the film, despite the main android kind of being in sort of like the back side of the poster itself.
Yeah, Crash and Burn is definitely one of those flicks that you're going to come away initially a little bit disappointed that you didn't quite get what they were selling it as. I mean, in the vast majority of other English-speaking territories, I think they billed this as Robot Jox 2. So it was like outwardly promising giant robot action, and we get all of maybe 2 or 3 minutes of that in the film. But like a lot of classic horror films that lie to you on the fucking poster art, Crash and Burn you know, you end up coming out of it like, it's a bit of a bummer that that robot or that creature wasn't actually involved in the movie, but man, did this kick ass, you know. So I don't hold it against it too much. And the robot is a pretty good sort of major component in the finale of the film, which we'll get to obviously when we get there. And it sort of serves as a good way to like tie this movie into the history, in my mind, of stuff like Robot Jocks and Robot Wars. You know, I like to think Crash and Burn happens in the distant future after all of that shit, and this is what's left of it, is these rusted heaps, these, you know, robots that are technically illegal to use, and old Megan Ward fixes it up and brings it into play during the finale. So what about you, Mikey? I imagine you saw Crash and Burn way back in the day, huh?
Yes, of course. When I rented Playmaster 2 from a video store from Blockbuster, the video zone after the movie shows the common attractions, and I saw the common attraction of Crash and Burn. Then one day, me and my dad went to a video store, and Crash and Burn was out for rental, and we rented Crash and Burn. It was very good, and now years later, I go on eBay, and I buy the Crash and Burn VHS, and I had a VCR back in the day, and I watched Crash and Burn on VHS again, the behind the scenes. And I got that Charles Band Archive DVD set, and I watched it on Film and Features, and it's a really good movie. And I like the giant robot in the end. He's mostly sleeping throughout the whole movie, and he wakes up in the end. He stomps on the evil synthoid or human cyborg Quinn, who's played by Bill Moseley.
Yeah, spoiler alert, he squishes Bill Moseley. You dented my plate, you dog dick. That's like, hey, what's up, Michael? We'll get the highlight old Michael McNally's comment here real quick. I know that you have a pretty cool standee that hopefully you'll show off again tonight from Crash and Burn there, Mikey. That is a rare gem indeed, and I am surely jealous of that. That cannot be an easy thing to get a hold of, especially not in as good a condition as you have it there. Absolutely fucking glorious. Oh, what's that? A little sticker? Is that a... Oh, it's a pin.
Nice.
Yeah, dude. You know there was like Blockbuster employees and shit rocking those back in the day. Absolutely awesome. Go ahead, bud. You're going to add something to that, Mikey?
No, I just said sure did.
Oh, yeah. There's not a huge collector's market for that. I mean, I'm sure there is. We just don't hear about it, but it's a shame you don't see people showing off more promotional pins from movie releases, because you'd always see that when you would go to video stores. Like the employees would have a random, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street pin or something like that, you know, and they've got to be floating around out there. Unfortunately, I'm sure they're all fairly rare, because you know how many employees probably threw those fucking things away, like after they were done being required to wear them or whatever. So it's safe to say that we all enjoy Crash and Burn. It's a film that I actually did not see somehow as a little kid. It just escaped me. It was one of those random ones that I was definitely aware of it. Maybe our local video store just never had it, because it was a mom and pop's shop, so they didn't exactly get everything from every label or distributor that they were affiliated with. So Crash and Burn was one that I'm fairly certain I never saw until I started collecting full moon movies, but it became kind of an instant classic for me. Of course, I was suckered in by the idea of the giant robots, but I'm a big fan of like The Thing and Terminator and stuff like The Manchurian Candidate, and it's got elements of all of that in there. So, and I really love Bill Moseley. We'll be talking about him a little bit more as this goes on. I had a very brief but interesting encounter with him at a horror convention, so that's worth talking about. Hopefully this one fly that managed to survive the fall weather right now and is fucking with me in my house will eventually leave. But let's get into, I guess, talking about the cast of characters that we got here, shall we? Before that, we'll nail down the basic plot, because it is pretty basic. Dude delivering some Freon to a TV station in the middle of a post-apocalyptic desert in a world where the UV radiation is slowly frying everybody if they don't take precautions against it, is caught up in a plot where the people at said TV station have been broadcasting messages and information to this resistance group that's fighting against this evil corporation called Unicom, who has basically outlawed the use of computers by civilians. They've outlawed robots, basically taken away a bunch of civil rights. So the people live under their control. It's hardcore, like communist dictatorship type stuff, where the only information they're supposed to be allowed to receive is stuff that comes direct from the company. And it turns out that in order to weed out these resistant cells, they've reactivated these synthetic android assassins to send in as sleeper agents to, infiltrate these groups and destroy them from the inside. That's the basic plot. We'll touch on the finer points of it as we move through it here. But I guess we'll just talk about our main character right off the top here. We got old Tyson Keene, played by Paul Gannis. What are your thoughts on Paul Gannis, or Tyson Keene, Mason? What do you think of him as our leading dude in this film?
Anyway, Tyson King seems. I mean, he's a pretty cool character. All the same, kind of serves in a way that's similar to Wool, or to the main lead of Shadow Zone, with this one guy being caught in the middle of this little resistance group that is being hunted down by cyborg assassin. Since it becomes sort of the unexpected hero / survivor trying to take them down.
What do you think, Mikey?
I think Tyson Keene's a very good character, just like Hickok in Shadow Zone. He comes in, gets everybody, talks about what's going on, and tries to keep everybody safe, and talks about the cybers and the Unicron company taking over everything, and he just keeps on top of it.
Yeah, he seems very similar to Hickok from Shadow Zone in a lot of ways. I would imagine that the movies weren't like, it's hard to say. I think Crash and Burn, from what I was reading on the Schlock Pit, was a movie that basically they already had in the can ready to go as, Empire was dissolving. Like, I think if I'm not mistaken, this hit the shelves before Robot Jox even was seen anywhere, like at least in the States. So they were actually able to beat the premiere of Robot Jox in the States with the release of Crash and Burn, which leads me to believe they were working on this probably somewhat simultaneously with shit like Puppet Master, with shit like Shadow Zone, and even Meridian. Full Moon and Charlie Band in general is the king of the fast turnaround when it comes to that stuff, and he really proved it with Crash and Burn for sure. So I don't know that there's really any cues taken from Shadow Zone when it comes to Tyson Keene as a character, but I do think it just sort of fits the general archetype or whatever of the sort of hero that Charlie Band was trying to push for these sort of movies. And he's very similar to Hickok in a lot of ways. He's definitely just a genuine dude that seems to actually care about the plight of other people. He's not a company guy. He technically works for Unicom, but he's really just being a delivery boy to make some money. He doesn't care about the company's bottom line or whatever. He seems to genuinely take some interest in the fact that these people are trying to help out this resistance against them. He's surprised by it, but he's not like totally put off by it. So he's not just a lapdog for the corporate overlords or whatever. He's got that kind of handsome hero quality to him and some fantastic fucking hair. I've got to admit, he's got quite the hairdo in this film. It is delightful. I'd run my fingers through it. I don't know about you guys. So after that, we've got Erin, played by Megan Ward. What are your thoughts on Erin as a character? I like how they spell her name Arren, just to make it like futuristic, right? Because in the future, of course, we're going to stop spelling common names the common way. We're gonna make it a little weirder. What do you think about Erin, Mason?
Yeah, Erin's a pretty cool character. Basically, so the first film debut of Megan Ward, who we'll see again in films like Transformers 2 and Arcade. In a way, she kind of plays a key role to sort of the giant mech of the movie, trying to basically activate it, seeming like a key to basically like stopping the androids themselves, and basically like bring freedom of the source. Yeah.
What about you, Mikey? What are your thoughts on the debut of Megan Ward and this character, Aaron, that she plays in this film?
I think she's a very good, very strong character, and she's the computer person, because she does like all the computer work, and she's the one that brings the giant robot to life in the end. And she makes sure everything is working, and she knows her thing.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're kind of introduced to her, and she's just this adorable, sarcastic sort of camera girl for the TV station that her grandpa runs. Latham Hooks, played by Ralph Waite, of many fames. Ralph Waite should be well known to a lot of people who are fans of older film or television. She, has some really cool suspenders, which I don't know why that went to my notes, but it did. It's in there. I like those suspenders, man. What can I say? I don't know. There was something cool about like kids in 80s and 90s movies that wore suspenders. I was always intrigued by it. And for a time, I wore some suspenders myself as a teenager. It was not complimentary to my look at the time, like it is for Megan Ward in the film. But I rocked them nonetheless. She is Latham's granddaughter, as I said. As Mikey pointed out, she's a tech whiz. She works on the robot as kind of a side hobby, but she is also actively involved in like sending these messages, this encrypted information or whatever, out to the ILU, which is the Independent Liberation. I don't know exactly how that abbreviation worked. It's the resistance. So her grandpa's really the one that was like pushing it, but she's the tech whiz kid. He's kind of an older dude, so naturally she was the one setting it up and kind of helping him run it. So she's the first one to know that something has went drastically wrong when her grandpa ends up mysteriously killed. You would not think this was her film debut by watching her performance in this. And I'm almost positive if we did some research, she had to have done like commercials or some TV productions, or at least a fair amount of stage acting before she got involved with Full Moon here. I like that she's kind of the kid of the movie, but instead of being a little kid, she's like a teenager, which definitely would have gotten right in my feels at the time as a kid. And, obviously I saw later movies with Megan Ward as a young lad and definitely had a crush on her. I was super bummed when I first saw this because of the fact that I didn't get to enjoy crushing on Crash and Burn Megan Ward as a young lad. But she's kind of that perfect character to put in there to serve as like our window into the movie, especially if you were of the appropriate age at the time the film came out. I don't know how old you were when Crash and Burn came out, Mikey, but I know a lot of people watching this stuff were like young kids or early teen age, at the time, just like I was. And I think it goes a long way to have that character in a movie without them being an annoying little kid that you can identify with. What were you going to say, Mike?
I was 5 years old when Crash and Burn first came out. Only 5 years old.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's, and then especially as you grew up with the movie, then I'm sure that the Megan Ward role in this was very impactful on you and definitely solidified your love for the character. I mean, anybody who's a fan of Full Moon pretty much seems to universally appreciate Megan Ward. She was in enough good movies and gave great performances in each of those films that we've never gotten tired of her, because she also wasn't in like way more movies than she wanted to be. It'd be really cool to interview her one day or like learn more about her, because as much as we've repeatedly watched the films she's in over the years, I don't really know a ton about Megan Ward, and I've never looked into her work outside of Full Moon really. Probably should have done that before this review, but great character, great chemistry with Paul Gannis. They have this cool like big brother little sister thing going on through the movie that I think adds a lot of charm to the proceedings, and I don't think that the movie would be the same without either of them. Pretty much those two and Bill Moseley make the whole thing. Everybody else in the movie also rocks, but you could have recast them with a multitude of different actors in the movie. Still would have largely ended up the same. But, you know, Paul Gannis, Megan Ward, and Bill Moseley are the linchpins that hold this thing together, in my opinion. So next up, we've got Winston Wicket, played by Jack McGee. What are your guys' thoughts on Winston Wicket? I got to let the dog out. I can still hear you. We'll start with you, Mason, and then we'll move on to you, Mikey.
Winston Wicket, I say, is pretty insecure, like getting away. He's the more anxious, big guy, and who that ends up be in a way more cautious guy, like when like in a sort of nice scene when he had to cut each other's fingers. He's more anxious, and then Quinn comes in and basically like cuts his finger, basically infecting it, and so yeah. Pretty interesting, but in a way, sort of comedic character, I would say.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say that Winston's a very anxious guy, too. He's very anxious. The way he talks to people, he complains about things, and he curses at everybody, and he acts like the real big guy sometimes. And, yeah, when he gets his finger cut, and he just yells, screams, he's anxious, and he's kind of panicky, he just doesn't want anything to happen, and of course, he gets his thing in the end.
That he does. In addition to being anxious and obnoxious, he is also sweaty, sleazy, and gross. He's basically a post-apocalyptic Howard Stern who, you know, runs this late-night style TV show out of this television station. The reason that he kind of has free run to be the sleazy dirtbag he is because his father or something, or his uncle, something like that. His uncle owns the mortgage or whatever to the building that they use, which is like a crazy power substation, and it has shown up in other full moon movies, hasn't it?
I think it did.
Like, I want to say it's something that they've used for a couple of them. It might be in Seed People. I could be wrong on that. See, I'm fuzzy on some of those random trivia things. There was a time where I had it like written down somewhere, but I feel like this has shown up in other full moon movies. It might even make a brief appearance, or some recycled footage from it might be used in Bad Channels as well. I could be wrong again on those things, but or in the very least, it's been used in other B movies, right? Like maybe not full moon movies specifically, but I know that I've seen this actual power substation or whatever it is that they're using for the exteriors has shown up in some other stuff. Maybe even Doll Man. It might be in the background of one of those shots.
I think maybe Bad Channel, since that took place in sort of a broadcast.
Yeah, I feel like they used.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say the same thing. Bad Channels, yes, I'm gonna have to say the same thing.
Yeah, it seems like the most likely one of them for sure. But yeah, his uncle owns the station, so Winston kind of has free run to be a gigantic douchebag. And as Mike pointed out, he surely gets his comeuppance in this film. And it's going to be delightful to discuss that scene because it is brutal. After that, we have Paris, played by Ava LaRue. What do you guys think of her character? We'll start with you again. We'll just keep doing the round table thing. You know, what do you think of Ava LaRue's character, Paris, in this film, Mason?
Paris is like a pretty alright character. Like it, I don't know if I'm remember correctly. Isn't she the one that kind of a twist that she's also the
end? Yeah, spoiler alert, she's also a killer android.
Like in a way she's kind of said that sort of the love interest mainly until that sort of twist that turned that she's also evil. Which
is go ahead, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt
in a way, almost in the same line as screen, like with the so the quote unquote love interest mainly is actually like the killer, or at least one of the killers.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of left with the idea that maybe, I mean, the boot on his hand kind of makes it seem like it was Bill Moseley who kills Latham, at the onset of the chaos. But I guess it could have been her wearing some man boots for a minute. I feel like the reveal is a little bit handled poorly and just tacked on at the end so we could get one more sweet effect shot with the headshot. We'll discuss that more as we get to it. Mikey, what do you think of Paris as a character?
Well, she's the teacher, she's the educational person, so I think she's a helpful person, she's the lover, she's like have a love interest, but then, she turns around, she's the second killer.
Yeah, it's a pretty whack reveal at the end, but I do like that it leads to a really cool shotgun headshot, so I'm never going to complain about it. But my notes for Paris are not great. I mean, she's basically exists to feed us backstory at the beginning of the movie. It seems like her main function is to teach the kids that live out in this wasteland attached to the people that I guess run the video station, even though it never says any of them have kids. So who exactly is she teaching? It wasn't exactly made clear. Maybe they're broadcasting this teaching, sort of like they would eventually do during the pandemic with all the kids and their Zoom sessions. My daughter did that all through it, and I'm not gonna lie, there was part of me that like flashed back to Crash and Burn with that, because it's very similar. That's the only thing I can come up with, because Latham clearly doesn't have little kids that need like a teacher. His granddaughter seems like she's doing fine on her own with her tech and everything like that, so I don't think she's actively going to school. Winston Wicket definitely doesn't have fucking kids, or at least not kids that he sees, so I don't know whose children she's educating in this, but she's doing it. So she's basically there to give us backstory on Unicom and the stuff that happened beforehand. She puts a little bit of company propaganda in there, so she's obviously towing the bottom line for the company, at least in terms of her broadcasts. She's definitely a little bit of eye candy. She's a pretty woman, so that she's got that going for her. And I guess she serves as a half-assed love interest for Tyson. Really, it feels like the love interest between them is there so that you can have those scenes where Megan Ward is like jealous of it, which is adorable. It's handled in a very respectful way, which we'll get to as we talk about their chemistry later on. But Paris is a fairly useless character. She doesn't really do much through the movie. She's just there wearing purple, looking pretty. And then it turns out she's also a killer robot. Like, oh, didn't see that coming. And that's it. Yeah, she might be the most useless character in the movie. The two hookers, who I didn't even write down their names, have a little bit more personality than Paris, who is top billing for the fucking movie. So I guess Ava LaRue must have done some good stuff. I'm sure I probably recognize her from things, but I always just think of her as like the purple lady from Crash and Burn. So do you guys know her from any other Full Moon Productions? Yeah, when Mikey just shakes his head, that's how she hasn't done shit. Yeah, I swear I just saw that mask smile again. I think it's in my fucking imagination, but who knows? Maybe it is alive. After that, we have Quinn, played by the one and only Bill Moseley. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on old Quinn. What do you think of Quinn, Mason?
Well, Quinn is like in a way, it's pretty interesting, entertaining. It's like in a way he starts out like just this sort of like no guy working for the group. In a way, when chaos struck, she kind of tried to keep calm and actually seemingly trying to help out till the reveal that he is basically the android killing people. And anyway, it kind of goes through sort of this total 180 where he started acting insane, like he actually picks at his head so on a trip like Jimmy Cricket went Crash and Burn.
Oh, I love that fucking scene so much, dude.
Yeah. I didn't know like Bill back then know much about the actors like Bill Mosley. When I learned that Bill Mosley was like the guy who played Chop Top, and we all know how crazy he was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre too. So he kind of seemed like he brought that energy into the character with the whole reveal.
For sure. The best description I heard of it was when I was reading on the Schlock Pit forum. They described it as he went full Chop Top by way of the Terminator or Ash from Alien, and I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Mikey, what do you think about Bill Mosley and his performance as Quinn in this film?
It's very awesome because he's the engineer. He does like all the maintenance because the air conditioner shuts off at some point, and he tries to get it back on. It turns back on. And he's a very helpful guy, and he's always with everybody. But then on the other hand, he turns around, and he's the android, the killer. And I like that scene too. Like, he gets shot in the head. His skin starts to break and disintegrate. And Aaron stabs him with the comb. Then
the fucking hair pick.
Yeah, right. And then it tells you he's the android, and he takes a little microchip out and throws it and steps on it and says, "Oh, Jiminy Cricket's been crashed and burned." And I also like when Tyson Keene, Aaron, and Paris drive away, he falls right into the truck and he yells, "What's the rush?" and breaks the glass, tries to get to them.
Yeah, man, there's just nothing bad you can say about Bill Mosley in this film. He plays the character so cool and calm. Like, my notes basically just say he's quiet, polite, well-mannered, good handyman until he's a killer android. He keeps a cool head though, even after the shit kicks off, which lends itself to the idea that there's this sort of Manchurian Candidate sleeper agent thing going on in this movie, where even Bill Mosley doesn't realize he's the killer android at first, because they send him these codes to like trigger it, right? The crash and burn virus. And he himself says during the infamous fucking monologue with the Jiminy Cricket stuff that, he basically was just programmed to kill the old guy. And then after that, he was in crisis mode with the rest of the people. He was basically just another person stuck in this situation with them again. His programming activated momentarily. He kills Latham, which I guess solves our question earlier. It was definitely Bill Mosley that killed Latham because he admits to it. But then he reverted back to like his sleeper agent programming and was really the most calm and collected dude while they were trying to figure out this whole emergency. He didn't even sabotage the power when they turned it back on. It's not until later, after Megan Ward brings up the whole thing where they basically should be killing the android should be killing whoever they see as a threat, that it fully awakens Bill Mosley as this killer android, and he rips out the Jiminy Cricket chip and stomps on it and plays an epic game of hide and seek with them that results in some blood and gore and fucking mayhem. I think it's a pretty masterful performance by him. I don't think it's going to be touching, Chop Top or, his performance as the dude in House of a Thousand Corpses anytime soon. It's all a whole hell of a lot better than his appearance in Pink Cadillac, where he's just sort of standing in the background of the movie. Really good movie, though. If you like Clint Eastwood, I highly recommend Pink Cadillac. Randomly watched that about a month before we started this series, and it just so turned out that Bill Mosley, I think it was his first feature film. So, interesting. Love him as Chop Top. Bill Mosley is a dude that I'm a huge fan of just in general. He did about a dozen albums with Buckethead, which is one of my favorite musicians on the fucking planet. If you're not familiar with Buckethead, you need to become familiar with Buckethead. He might not be human and is possibly the best guitarist to ever walk the fucking earth. He had a band with Bill Mosley called the Cornbugs, and a lot of the time it was Bill Mosley basically being his Chop Top character in a band with Buckethead, who, Buckethead probably most famously filled in for Slash on guitar with Guns N' Roses for a while. He's a feller what wears a plain white mask and a KFC bucket on his head. So if you guys aren't familiar with this, Google it. You won't be disappointed. It's mostly instrumental music too, so cool stuff to throw on while you're doing your housework or picking out a movie to watch or whatever. But just infinitely interested in Bill Moseley. He seems also like a dude who only does movies for people he respects and has some sort of a working relationship with, or movies that he's actually passionate about the idea of, which is why I think he's able to bring such rad energy to stuff like this. And the movie truly would not be the same without Bill Moseley. I think that whole monologue he has when it's revealed that he is the killer android, and he's talking about how, he's got that Jiminy chip in his brain. I think he even says, like, cute, isn't it? Like it's Jiminy Cricket from the Pinocchio thing. I'm a real boy. It's such a good, perfectly written, perfectly executed monologue. And it is fucking bone chilling, dude. I think it might be the scariest scene in any full moon movie ever in terms of pure acting, where Bill Moseley is revealing that we're going to have some fun now. I'm going to fuck you guys up. And it's just cuz, I had a really interesting encounter with Bill Moseley at the last horror con that I attended, where he was walking out of the place. See, I'm not really a big autograph hunter. I don't go hunting for the selfies or anything, so I don't tend to bother to the celebrities. And Bill Moseley's coming out as I'm going in, and he sees me, and he sees that I recognize him. But then as we're passing each other, or approaching each other closer, and he sees that I'm not going to bother him, because he was clearly walking with purpose. Like, he had to go somewhere. He had signings he was doing that day and shit. And he was, walking at a good clip. So as we're walking, I just kind of gave him that nod, like, hey, and then he said in that Bill Moseley voice, he's like, hey, and then just walked on. It was so cool, dude. He's wearing a Guar t-shirt, which just filled me with joy. Bill Moseley seems like a legit dude, and he seemed like he genuinely appreciated me not fucking with him in the lobby of that hotel that day. So cheers, Bill. If you ever watch this, we'd love to get you on here someday and talk about the corn bugs and your time with Buckethead and all the fun that you had with Charlie Band from Full Moon, because this was not Bill's only appearance in Full Moon films. To my knowledge, the only other one was him coming back for Evil Bong, but that's still kind of a fucking big deal. I think he even did that post House of a Thousand Corpses. So Bill did not have to be slumming it with Charlie Band after that point, and he came on to maybe one of their cheapest movies ever just to be a cool dude. So Bill Moseley will always be Full Moon royalty, in my opinion, just for this film and being cool enough to come back for Evil Bong. After that, we've got Lathan Hooks, Ralph Waite. What do you guys think of the old man in the film?
Very simple. But mostly someone as like the grandfather of Megan's character, and kind of someone as the sort of the catalyst to the mayhem with his death being by the hands of Quentin, and with a sort of so dramatic that he ends up fall into like some power lines, causing the place to kind of shut down for a sec.
Yeah, I mean, if you chuck an old feller right into the transformer that powers the whole place, generally it's gonna kill the power, at least for a little bit. Possibly the biggest physical stunt. I think it is actually not even possibly. It's hands down the biggest physical stunt that we've seen in a full movie, as far as our progression through these discussions, right? There wasn't people getting chucked off of fucking catwalks in the other movies. And I think it looks pretty cool the way he falls down onto the thing. And I mean, they had, obviously the stuntman didn't fall from the full height of where they were standing up there, or they made it look way higher than it was. But the dude fell a decent ways onto shit that did not look like it was comfortable to fall on. So in terms of stunts, this definitely has to get the ding for being like our first big physical stunt in a full moon movie for this series. Mikey, what do you think of Ralph Waite as Lathan Hooks?
Well, he's like the head of the crew. He's the operator. He's the boss. So he gives everybody orders, and everybody does their thing. And he operates the whole station. And whenever when he fixes the problem, then of course Quinn, Bill Moseley, comes to him and just kills him and takes him off that cliff, and he's dead.
That he is. I think that Latham is kind of an underrated character in Crash and Burn. He, kind of is the moral linchpin of the movie. He's a proper, honest, old school journalist that wants to tell the truth. He's determined to fight against Unicom and their propaganda and their oppression and all of that. And it's very clear, like, even outside of his covert activities of sending code and information out to the Rebel Alliance, basically, that he's also just openly critical of Unicom while he's on the public broadcasts. Like, the dude does not have any fear of this company at all. He's standing on his morals and really kind of like instilling in Megan Ward's character, Erin, the idea that she's got to, stand for the truth and justice and all that stuff in the American way, just like Superman. Regardless of the circumstances or how hard it might be, there's a lot of cool, like, morality that's conveyed in the movie through Latham. And even though he's not there as long as he could have been, I really dig Ralph Waite. I think his performance as the character was good. I think they killed him off a little early, but again, as Mason said, he's kind of the catalyst for the whole crisis of the film. So if you don't kill Latham and throw him into the fucking, the Transformers, you don't get the rest of the movie. But I think that, the dude did a good job. It was great that they got who they could get in there, Ralph Waite, to portray the character. And I think it adds a lot of honesty and sincerity to the sort of the message of the movie, the backbone of the plot, which is that there's this evil corporation that's like oppressing the people. And this old guy's taking it upon himself to put his entire life on the line, and even the life of his granddaughter, to try and, give the people some freedom. He's in the movie very briefly, but he makes an impression while he's there, I would say. Even, the way Bill Moseley talks about him, like, oh, he's a tough old man, but he's fair, like that seems true. And right out of the gate, the Tyson Keene character seems to have a decent amount of respect for Latham as well. And maybe some of that could be a nod to how experienced Ralph Waite was as an actor. So there's a little bit of life imitating art, or art imitating life, however you want to look at it there. But I think it's cool the way the character's handled. And his death is a high point of the movie. I mean, again, dude gets chucked off a pretty tall catwalk there. So I guess before we get into the highlights and everything and talk about the finer points of the production, we should really just talk about that old robot there. I didn't know who to list as playing it because it's not a physical person, but we're just going to go ahead and credit it as being played by David Hellen. What do you guys think of the robot, its design, the 3 minutes that we get to see it in the film, all that? Go with you, Mason.
Yeah. Well, overall, the robot himself is pretty cool. Kind of, in a way, it seems like a nod to Robot Jock. Seemingly, in a way, it kind of seems like it's built by sort of the same model as the main one of the film. Though, despite the lack, in a way, it was not really doing much. It is sort of like foreshadowed throughout the film with Megan. Aaron basically trying to find a way to bring it back online and play her main part to basically Quinn's demise.
That's fair. Yeah, that's pretty much what goes on. What about you, Mikey? You got any thoughts on the robot? On the damn robot?
Oh yes, the robot's very awesome, and the way it rescues Tyson, it grabs that antenna or whatever that fell from the building, grabs it and sets him free, and of course squashes Bill Moseley, Quinn. Really good. I would have to say it's a hero for doing that.
Yeah, squished him just like a dang old corn bug. I think that the robot's design is pretty fucking cool, dude. Okay, I'm a big fan of giant robots in films like these that aren't designed to look like I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a certain point in old sci-fi where robots were made way too humanoid or way too abstract. So they either look like Robbie the fucking robot, which love the design, but we don't really need more than one of those. Or they look like, what was that big fucking robot guy from the Godzilla movies?
Jet Jaguar.
Jet Jaguar, yeah. Like, I love that this doesn't look like either of those sort of hokey robot designs. It looks like a legitimate piece of heavy equipment. Even right down to the name, the DV8. It sounds like a model of Caterpillar you would buy to, like, plow your back lot or, you know, dig up a driveway or something, you know. It very much looks like it has practical purpose. It looks humanoid in the sense that it's got, like, 2 legs and 2 arms, but that's about it. I love that it's kind of in disrepair, just laying there as a relic of old times, but at the end she's able to use her technological magics to resurrect it and have it come into play in the plot of the film. And it does serve as a pretty rad finale to what's essentially a slasher movie outside of that. You know, when you get right down to it, Crash and Burn is a murder mystery whodunit slasher film. And I think a lot of that's pretty effective the first time through. Obviously, once you've seen the movie and you know who it is, it loses a lot of its impact. But it's still a fun time. You know, I will say this about Crash and Burn. It's right up there with Doll Man for me, of being those full moon movies that just every single time I watch it, it's pretty much as fun as the first time that I saw it, you know. It doesn't lose any of its luster over time. And I think the robot is a great example of that as well. Just absolutely flawless stop motion by David Allen, as always. Real good sound design when it comes to the DV8. It sounds heavy. It sounds rusty. It sounds exactly how you think a robot should sound that's just been woken up after potentially hundreds of years of sleep and starts lumbering around, you know. They did a good job on just about every aspect of the robot, other than having it in the movie more often. But here's the question we got to ask ourselves. Would Crash and Burn really be better if there was more giant robot action in there? I mean, there's no other giant robot for the robot to fight, you know. So it being awoken for like that 3 minutes, I think is about all we really needed of it, you know. So as easy as it is to be kind of bummed that we don't get more giant robot action in the movie, I think a lot of that's just because we like that giant David Allen robot action. You know, it's not really a detriment to the film that the robot's only in there for a couple of minutes. And if anything, it's a really cool finale. The thing I think would have made it more effective is if they left it off the poster altogether. And just let it be a surprise that we get like a giant robot at the end of the movie. I get what they were doing. They had giant robot shit out previously, or, you know, as it turns out, giant robot stuff that was on the way with Robot Jocks. So, you know, I get why they were trying to link the two and trying to market it as like this Robot Jocks adjacent thing. And as I mentioned, I do think it works. I think the robot ties it into like Robot Wars and Robot Jocks as like a future relic of those times gone by, you know. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think as a whole, I think it was better, obviously, off with the war being just reused as a final. I mean, if it was around for like the whole movie, I think it would have ended much quicker because, well, all I had to do was basically just squash the android. It's not like if there was like another android that giant robot that Quinn ends up like piloting, maybe that could give a reason for it to be more active. But since with just this one relic, it just makes sense to just have it just be the final act. And if it maybe just change other poster, basically just have two main leads looking out shot with a psychotic Bill Moji showing off his psychotic posture with a shotgun. Gun with an explosion in the background. That would have been
They even could have moved like the TV station up to like the top right corner or something and just had the silhouette of the robot laying in the rubble on the cover as a hint that there might be some giant robot action. but to show it up there front and center and make it look like it's like a main fixture of the movie on the poster art, I think hurts the movie more than anything. And it sucks because, as we've said, the robot doesn't really hurt the movie. What do you think, Mikey?
I think it'd be really cool, yeah, if the robots get with each other and the one robot, bad robot, and they fight and a gun shooting at the robot and the robot just squashing them. And that's all I have to say.
Well, we're kind of into the highlight section of this here. I do have to let my dog back in, but I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on the two, prostitute characters that we have in the movie. Regrettably, I did not write their names down because I had already completed the cast list and I kind of forgot that they were in the movie. But they are a pretty good, big part of the movie, really. I think that they both have good personality and they help out quite a bit when it comes to the emergency situation in the film. So what do you guys think of our two ladies of the night that are hanging out with Winston Wicket?
Both I can't find them both very entertaining. Because don't have something that's so like I don't go so I think Full Moon actually having some very hardly have female supports that sometimes take off that tops in the way they put it and they do end up helping out of the movie and so overall good characters to them.
Yeah, I believe their names are Chrissy and Sandra, because I saw it in the end credits in the end. And yeah, they're very helpful, they're entertaining. One of them wants to be a TV movie star, and the other one's just an ordinary person. And yeah, they're very helpful, and they show a lot of support.
Yeah, I think the one red-haired lady, I think her name was Sandra, she's extra concerned about Megan Ward's character the whole time. You'd be forgiven if you thought towards the end of this movie that they were actually going to kill off Paris and that the red-haired hooker lady was going to be the surprise final girl of the movie or the final adult girl of the movie. Because it does seem like kind of the way they were taking it, and then she just randomly sacrifices herself so that Megan Ward doesn't get shot, which might even be the most touching scene of the movie, I guess. The only other scene I could have seen being touching in the movie was the scene where Megan Ward is taking pictures of Bill Moseley laying on the ground after Tyson fucks him up real good in the TV studio with the shotgun. It would have been cool if they had Megan say I'll miss you, Quinn, or something, because they got along really well before his sleeper agent chip activated him to kill people. He was a genuinely nice character before he got activated and became the killer of the film, which I think does make Quinn a pretty tragic character. There is that Manchurian candidate element to him, like I said, where it's I don't even know that he's aware that he's a killer android until about half the way through the film. So that pretty much does it with characters, man. I mean, we've gotten through all that shit. Now we're just basically into highlights from the film, which we'll run through here. It shouldn't take too long. I will say that one of the first things I noticed watching the movie is just the whole introduction scene is pretty great in establishing the tone of the film. It feels hot. It feels dusty. You're watching Tyson go through the desert on his motorcycle, which apparently runs on kerosene. I thought that was pretty neat. I don't know if that's a sort of a real thing. And then he stops at this sort of very Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque roadside sort of fuel station to get that kerosene. They offer him some snake jerky. We get to see the character of Scratch, who is actually the dude, I forget his name, but he's in Blood Dolls. And he plays this random madman in this film that's been totally fried by the UV radiation. So he's just totally insane and all crusty. What do you guys think of this opening bike run with the kerosene and the roadside fucking gas station and the crusty characters that inhabit it?
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of a good setup that this takes place sort of in a post-apocalyptic where in a way, it's like there's basically nothing but desert in this one, and there's just this one gas station standing in the middle, and one of the people who run there just basically just lost his mind, just chuckling when he just repeats what the main character said.
Are you Batman? I don't know why I like that part so much. What about you, Mikey? What do you think of this opening scene here and the world building?
Well, it's a really good setup. It's a perfect start. Really good start. He's flying down the road. He goes, stops at the gas station to get the kerosene to fuel up. Then he gets the steak jerky, and after that, he's all fueled up, and he's just ready to go and do what he's got to do. It's really good.
I think, like I said, it does a great job of setting the tone for the film, the general feel of the film. Like it's like rapid fire world building. You know, they establish the world, the vibe, the tone, the general sorts of characters that you might be meeting in this, which is like sort of normal characters and then sort of crusty characters. All of that sort of portrayed in that first opening sequence of the movie. You're very much given the idea that this is a world where everybody's living on their very last resources. I mean, they're eating snake jerky, they're fueling their bikes with kerosene. We see those TV reports. I think Dave Dakota actually is in one of those, where, you know, you basically learn that, you know, the government has advised people to wear their heat suits at all times when they're outside. So that makes the distance they're traveling, like overland on bikes and stuff, all the more harrowing, because without those white suits, they could literally fucking cook to death on their bicycles or their motorcycles. Bicycles. You know, and we also get introduced to the Ralph Waite character via his news broadcast while he's at the fueling station, which I think is a cool touch, you know. Usually you don't meet any of your main characters in a film on a TV before you actually see them on screen physically interacting with the other characters in the movies. So I think that that's pretty cool. And the movie really does feel hot. I love how there's like a bunch of dirty orange and sort of tan textures to the way that the movie looks. I'm sure some of that was done in post. I'm sure some of that was the natural environment that they were shooting in. But there is really like an orange and a tan and a like rust colored thing going on with Crash and Burn that's present throughout the whole movie in terms of like the color palette of the film. And then in addition to that, you've got like the dark, dank, sort of sweaty atmosphere that's inside the TV station. I think it all works together really well. You get, you know, some cool sort of time-lapse photography of clouds that they've tinted to be orange to illustrate the idea of this thermal wave, this thermal storm that's coming in, which facilitates the whole plot in general because it forces Tyson to have to stay overnight at the TV station as opposed to just moving on. Is it just me, or does this movie have like a fun sleepover vibe to it? You know? Like, I wish that I was renting this as a kid just to play it during like a summertime sleepover where you are a little bit hot and sweaty with your friends, like watching movies in your bedroom or whatever. Because I think it would have lent itself well to that, you know, like they literally have a sleepover in the movie. Of course, you know, I would be glad that Winston Wickett's sweaty beer gut wasn't involved in my sleepover, but it's cool that, you know, they have that vibe to it, I think. I mean, did either of you guys pick up on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, there's this bit of sleepover bias, you know, like for more just a guy that just hang out and then all hell breaks loose at the station, and then they try to stay calm and kind of stick together, and so we're trying to figure out who exactly is the android.
Right. What do you think, Mikey? You dig on those sleepover vibes that Crash and Burn has going on?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Like, it's like they come over and they get with each other, they help each other out, and they work together, and they have dinner together, and find out who the android is, and they stick together to just do what they gotta do.
That they do. We already kind of touched on Tyson and Aaron having like great brother and sister chemistry, but I do think we should reiterate there are times in the movie where Megan Ward's character gets like jealous of the fact that Paris and Tyson seem to have like some attraction going on there. I think that's relatively normal with like that big sister, little brother, or like, you know, cousin relationship where I mean, a lot of times, you know, girls or boys will have like a crush on an older sibling of some kind like that. Purely innocent. They're not going to make any weird flipper babies or like start their own, you know, backwoods inbred clan or anything. It's just how it works with kids sometimes, figuring out, you know, attraction to other people or whatever. And this person's familiar and it's an older person in your life or whatever. So you get a little bit of that with Tyson and Aaron's character, and she's kind of jealous, like openly, about his chemistry that he clearly has going on with Paris. I think it's handled really well. There's even like a scene in the film where, you know, nowadays I could see a lot of people reading it as creepy or inappropriate, but Megan Ward's like in the bathroom after one of those exchanges, and she takes her shirt off and she's like checking her boobs out in the mirror and like trying to make them look big or whatever. And I mean, it's very tastefully handled portrayal of a girl that's like having her first crush on an older dude, and she's got a maturing body, and she's like trying to figure out how to be a woman, I guess, which is surprising. It's a surprising amount of depth for a full moon movie. I think we can all agree on that. I mean, they usually aren't putting that kind of care into writing some of these characters. They're well known for just having girls that are there to get naked, but that's not the purpose. I mean, it's clearly stated that Aaron is 16 years old in this movie. So they're not trying to do anything creepy with it. And despite how people might want to try to read that into it, I don't think any of those scenes are meant to illustrate that. I think it's a very kind of adorable portrayal of a younger girl having a crush on an older dude and trying to figure out what it is to like be a woman or whatever. Obviously, it's a full moon movie that runs 85 minutes, so there's not time to really explore that. I don't know that it really needed to be explored, but it's neat that they put that little bit of nuance in there. And it's definitely something I've always noticed with Crash and Burn. Like, it's got a little almost of a coming of age thing woven into it with the Aaron character throughout the thing. And by the end, she's wearing sunglasses. Clearly, she's become a badass. They're setting out on this road trip to go find the resistance and join them properly, like in person. And they still haven't lost any of that cool brother-sister chemistry that Tyson and Aaron have. And I think that's neat. In other movies of the time, they might have taken it in a very creepier direction and had them like kiss at the end or something, you know, but they didn't do that at all. They left it very much the innocence of it intact, which I appreciate. Did either of you guys pick up on any of this, or am I just crazy?
But I didn't pick on it before, but after what you had said, yeah, there is sort of a coming is that's with it, and basically like checking her breasts, and then the way she does end up becoming more mature. Basically, the one who ends up getting the final kill on Paris wants to reveal that she was also an Anne, but kind of showing that how she's grown as sort of a survivor.
And even that final kill is tinged with that little bit of jealousy, because she's like, because Paris says something like, don't I get one more kiss or whatever? And then Megan is like, kiss this, and just fucking racks the shotgun shell right into her fucking brain. What about you, Mikey? I mean, again, am I just crazy and reading too much into this, or do you think that I'm onto something with that a little bit?
No, I caught up to it because, you know, Aaron and Tyson are like the brother and sister. They get together, and Paris comes in, gets to Tyson, and Aaron gets a little jealous. So at one point, yeah, Aaron shows her us, and in the end, when Paris turns into the Symphenoid and says, "Don't you want to kiss me one last time?" And Aaron comes in and he goes, "Oh, kiss this," and blows her head off, and it's just them two. Yeah, I got a point there.
So I mean, I guess really all there's left to do. I mean, that kind of covers most of the finer points of stuff that I had laid out in this. Everything else we pretty much touched on up to this point while we were breaking down the film. So all there really is to do is talk about like the kills and our final thoughts on the basic aspects of the production. I guess our first real kill in the movie, other than Latham getting tossed over the catwalk onto the generators or whatever, is when Winston gets killed. Earlier in the film, they do a blood test to reveal who supposedly is the synth among the group, you know, and it's handled very convincingly because everybody seemingly passes the blood test. I think this is one of the most genius aspects of Crash and Burn. They all bleed regular blood, right? So you assume like, oh, maybe she is wrong. Maybe there's someone that has snuck into the complex that's doing this, you know. But then it's revealed that after Quinn cut himself with the scalpel, he forces Winston to let him cut him like pretty deep. Nobody likes Winston because he's a sleazy fuckbag. And Winston's hand gets just butt-tinglingly infected. You know, every time I watch that, it makes me cringe every time that I watch Crash and Burn. It made my girlfriend cringe pretty good, too, because it is hard to look at, dude. His hand all swelled up like that. And I've seen someone's hand swell like that in real life. And it is, they nailed it in this. It's very unnerving to see that, you know. So it's clear that there was something wrong with the blood that was on the scalpel last, and the blood that was on the scalpel last was Quinn's. So if you're an eagle-eyed viewer of the film and you're actually paying attention, that's kind of the moment where it's revealed that, oh, well, clearly Quinn is, there's something wrong with his blood in the very least, you know. He meets up with Winston in the dining room and decides to just yank his arm right off his body and then smash his skull into a fucking ceiling light. And it is maybe one of my favorite kills in a full moon movie. I mean, it's just so brutal and abrupt. And the way Bill Moseley's like, oh, no, you know, that's not going to wait for a doctor. I think we should amputate, you know, and he just fucking does it manually with no instruments or anything. Absolutely choice. I mean, what do you guys think of the way that was executed, the gore, all that stuff?
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. Like first Winston's finger gets infected, so in a way, it's all he goes. Like he's always suffering from that, and then he gets his arm whipped off. Also, like it's sort of into, so like it just started off with a cut, and then it's just his arm gone, like pull it off his body, then just lean to his head getting smashed right, like as a whole, yeah, pretty brutal.
You got any thoughts on that, Mikey?
Yes, I believe Winston gets what he deserves for yelling and screaming. I know he's anxious, but he's like the jerk off, and he's like really rude to everybody. The way he talks. So Mosley comes into the room, grabs him, rips his arm off, and lifts him and smashes his head on that ceiling light, and Winston's dead. Winston gets what he deserves. Yes. I believe
Sorry, bud. One of my favorite aspects of it, which kind of I wouldn't have thought of unless my girlfriend had asked about it, but she's like, why isn't his arm bleeding all over the place? And then it made me think of like people who get their arms suddenly like not decapitated, but like severed in wartime and stuff. And it's not like a splatter movie. I mean, she probably asked this because she's seen other movies I've watched around her where someone gets a limb severed and it's like a fountain of blood coming out of the thing. But that's not always how the human body works. Like sometimes when your limb gets severed so quickly like that, you know, your whole entire system in your body doesn't even have time to react to it and start pumping blood out of it right away. You know, so that's why you'll see like in wartime movies that we can take some confidence were portrayed pretty accurately, where there will be a dude who has like his arm blown off and then he's like searching around for the arm and just finds it. I mean, they're not like spraying blood, you know, like it's a fucking Japanese splatter flick out of the stump or whatever. A lot of times it's a slow trickle that turns into a thicker trickle and then you bleed out, you know. So I like the way that the Winston Wicket arm rip just happens. I love that way that it pulls like elastic too before it snaps off of his body. It just makes it so much more brutal. But I do like that there's not like a huge fountain of blood that comes out of it. It makes it feel like abrupt trauma and less like a horror movie kill, I guess. And then him smashing him into the fucking light is just comedic and brutal at the same time, so you can't really go wrong there. The only kill in the movie that I take major issue with, and it's set up so perfectly too, they just botch it at the end, is when he kills, Christine in the shower. Bill Moseley kind of sneaks in because she had the hots for him like earlier in the movie. And I can't say I blame her, but you know, he sneaks in there and he gets her to close her eyes, and he's like in the middle of boning her when she opens her eyes and realizes like, oh, he's all crusty, damaged android mode, you know, and she freaks out. And then he just grabs the shower head and I guess it electrocutes her. What the fuck is that? How does that make any sense? He's standing in the shower with like exposed circuit boards on his fucking skull, and it's not electrocuting her, but he can just do it at will when he touches the shower head of all things. I mean, what's happening there? Did they set up anything where he like rigged the shower head to be electrical? I didn't see that in the movie. Maybe it's a deleted scene we don't know about. I don't know. What do you guys think on it?
Yeah, in a way, it's it. That thing is basically, I guess it's along the lines of him just so that cybernetic structure connecting with the water hose causing it to electrocute or something like it. I don't know, but in a way, there could be more Bill like have a come up like more shock to actually try to get out, and then having him Quinn just basically like hold her down, like forcing her to look at him like she's in complete shock of what that he was the android the whole time, and then maybe smash her to the water hose, like smash her against the wall to her skull cracks. I think that would have been more effective in a way.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with that wholeheartedly, dude. I mean, it would have been cooler if it was like a show of brute strength, or even if they insisted on doing the let's electrocute her in the shower thing. They easily could have had a scene where like a 5-second like cut where it just showed him attaching like a jumper cable to the shower like pipe or whatever. I mean, they could have done something to set it up. If we're supposed to believe this guy just has like electrocuting powers out of nowhere, I mean, I don't know. I find it a little hard to swallow. What do you think, Mikey?
But I don't know how it does it. Like, he just puts his hand on the shower head and it just electrocutes. Like, I don't know how that works. Like, maybe they could have like they could have put like electrical wire. He could have like ripped it off and the sparks, and could have just put in the water and had her get Chrissy get electrocuted or something. I mean, that could have been done. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen kills like that in plenty of horror films. So I just don't know what was. It feels like there's like a scene that's missing, or something. Something's missing in that. And it really is a low point, unfortunately. And again, the setup to it so perfectly. I love how he's like banging her, and then she opens her eyes and realizes that he's gross and starts freaking out. I mean, it was such a perfect setup to what could have been a really cool kill, and then it ends up really being like the dud of the movie. It's the worst scene in the fucking movie. I mean, everything else in the movie works perfectly, in my opinion, but then we get to the shower electrocution. The second hooker, when she dies, Sandra, you know, that again is pretty touching. She steps in the way, he basically pushes Megan Ward out of the way and takes the bullet for her, and that's pretty great. And I love how she says to go get Christine, like, take Christine with you. And it just feels so bad that Christine's already dead because of such a lame kill that they can't even do that. Like, it would have been nice to at least save that bimbo for the nice hooker, because she literally sacrificed herself for one of the main characters. And then it turns out the other chick's already dead because of one of the lamest kills ever in a full moon movie, you know. So it's just every movie's entitled to have its flaws. Crash and Burn isn't without them. But that is the biggest flaw in the movie, in my opinion, is that particular scene. So after that, pretty much, it's down to just Aaron, Tyson, and Paris, and she resurrects the robot. We already talked about that. Obviously we talked about Paris being revealed as a synth and it kind of being underwhelming, and the sweet headshot at the end. So I guess that kind of does it for like key scenes, unless you guys have any highlight of the movie you'd like to point out. We can get into the finer points of this, share our favorites, and then close this sumbitch out. You guys got anything you feel we've missed up to this point? What about you, Mason?
I think maybe like I want to bring up the fact of like how this sort of advertising to some advertisers call it Robot Jack. She was like, I guess in like want to bring up that sort of where it's like in Robot Jacks itself there was sort of like catchphrase with the main lead where he goes crash and burn, which I argue might have been like sort of the inspiration for sort of the title.
Oh, it's taken directly from that, yeah. Which you could also argue, though, like here, maybe you'll feel me on this. You don't need to try to sell it as Crash and Burn, because anyone that's familiar with Robot Jocks would know that the Crash and Burn was just it could have been just billed as a spin-off to Robot Jocks, as opposed to them billing it as Robot Jocks 2, because Crash and Burn comes from Robot Jocks. So anybody familiar with Robot Jocks would have been like, oh, like this is, and then all they would have had to have done was put Crash and Burn, and then at the top put from the people who brought you Robot Jocks or whatever. Like, I think tacking Robot Jocks 2 onto the title is pretty dishonest, I made a comment about that like 3-4 years ago when I did my initial review on this movie, and I still feel that way. I think it's a little slimy, Charlie. Like, you tried to cash in on something that, I mean, I get it. There's no shame, I guess, in trying to cash in on one of your own properties, but it just is a little bit dishonest, whereas it just being called Crash and Burn, and as we've talked about, it kind of feeling like it happens in the distant future from Robot Jocks, from Robot Wars. I think that's fine. I don't know that you need to go that extra mile and lie to people and say that it's Crash and Burn 2. Or, I mean, Robot Jocks 2, What do you think, Mikey?
I think the same way, yeah. With the robot, yeah. Like, could have been like Robot Jocks 2. Like, could have had another giant robot, like, battle the robot, like, in the end, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, if anything, would have made more sense to try and sell Robot Wars as Robot Jocks 2. But again, Robot Wars feels like an updated title to Robot Jocks, so you don't really have to call it Robot Jocks 2, So both of them work, and we're going to have a good time when we discuss Robot Wars, man. I really like that movie. It's got some fun, cheesy stuff in it. Definitely not one of Full Moon's best, but far from their worst. I enjoyed the fuck out of that movie. So I guess now we'll talk just in general terms. How would you guys rate the overall performance of the cast and their chemistry with each other? Does it feel like a believable group of people that you can buy being stuck in this TV station together? Do you think they played off of each other well? Obviously, we'll do favorite characters and favorite scenes to close it out, but what do you guys think of that? The general cast performance and chemistry during this thing?
Quite personally, I think I would give it an 8 out of 10. As the characters seem believable in the situation. They feel believable in the situation and how they just in serious the whole thing is, and they're just trying to survive. And basically, the shock that one of them even to one of the nicer members of the group was to kill the whole time with this sort of shock and horror to reveal that it was him. Feels kind of is believable. So yeah.
Right on. What do you think, Mikey?
So I would give it a 5 stars. I mean, it was really good. The group, they get together and they help each other out. But then at one point, somebody plays out on everybody, and they find out that they're actually the symphoid, the killer, and he goes and kills everybody, and gets killed gets squashed by the robot in the end, and the two take off, and I think it's a really good story. Yes.
See, I don't know if it was just me really getting sucked in this particular viewing to the like sleepover vibes that the movie has, but it feels like it has like a really fun family dynamic, right? You got Megan Ward, who's kind of the little sister of the movie. You've got her grandpa with Latham, right? You've got Tyson Keene, who's kind of the big brother. You've got Sandra, the redheaded hooker that kind of acts as the big sister through the movie. You've got, I guess, Paris, who you could see as kind of like the sister-in-law that the little sister doesn't really trust and is kind of jealous of in a totally non-incestual way, but just normal, like, you know, small time little kid crush style jealous of her, you know. I think it all works together really well. You've got, you know, old Winston Wicket in there being the creepy, greasy fucking uncle. It's got kind of a family dynamic to the cast of the movie. And some of my favorite bits in the film are when they're just sitting around that dining room table talking. Like, you got that first initial dinner scene, and then you've got the later scene where they're doing the blood test. And even that has like a weird family dynamic to it, you know? So I would wager, if you asked any of these people if they had good chemistry with each other on set or if they got along well, they would all pretty much unanimously say that it was a fun time working with Charles Band and doing this movie together. And I think it reflects in the end, even though it's not necessarily a fun movie, it's pretty fucking creepy and harrowing through a lot of it. But you can tell that these guys were able to get in there and really focus on their performances and give it their all. And I think that's something that was even missing from Shadow Zone. I think that's something that was even missing from Meridian. It's something that was even missing from Puppet Master, if we're being honest. You know, the casts in those movies didn't seem to gel for me in the same way that the cast of Crash and Burn gelled, you know. There's always those one or two people that seem kind of out of place in the film, you know what I mean? Like, they're not necessarily doing a bad job. They're not hurting the movie at all, but having David fucking Lopan from Big Trouble in Little China in Shadow Zone wasn't necessarily, like, it wasn't the best fit with the rest of the cast. You know, there's a couple of people in Puppet Master, mainly our main dude with his helmet hair, that don't necessarily gel with the rest of the cast. I think Crash and Burn, somehow they hit this like perfect synergy with all the stuff where everybody feels like they should be in this movie. You know, there's no outlying person that feels like they're just kind of there, you know. And I think that's kind of what makes it special. You know, like I said before we went on the air, I think Crash and Burn might be the first pure banger in the Full Moon lineup. You know, Puppet Master has a lot of great potential. You know, the first Puppet Master movie is a classic, and I think we all reflected that in our discussion of it. But it's got its flaws. It's not perfect. There's continuity stuff that changes towards the sequels. I mean, I'll always love the movie, and I'll always consider it a classic, but is it a banger? Is it one of those movies that you would rent to, like, show to your friends? You know, I don't think, if it was the only one that existed in the franchise, I think it's the one we would go to because it's the only one that existed. But if like part 2, 3, 4, any of the other ones existed, you're probably going to show them one of those first, you know? Like, that's just how it worked. As little kids, we didn't give a shit about, like, you know, viewing order. We just wanted to show our friends cool shit. So, I mean, I can't even tell you how many people I showed Friday the 13th Part 6 to as their first Friday the 13th movie, you know? And I mean, Meridian, you're not going to show that to your friends unless it's like a select couple of friends that like sexy stuff too, you know, at the time. And then Shadow Zone, I guess, is like good rental fodder but I feel like Full Moon tops it. Or, I mean, Crash and Burn tops it. You know, I think it's the same sort of genre that they're working in, just a different way of executing it. But I think Crash and Burn is really them finding their stride, if that makes sense. Would you guys agree on any level? I mean, do you think this feels like a full-on Full Moon movie to me? Whereas even Puppet Master 1 still feels like a little bit like a demo tape, you know? It's got everything that would become Full Moon in spades, but they haven't quite dialed it in yet. And then when you really look at where they go from here, they go from this to Puppet Master 2 to Doll Man, isn't it? So, I mean, that's literally 3 right in a row that are pure Full Moon through and through. Like, they are exactly what this company would be known for. You know, whereas Crash and Burn, Meridian both, or I mean, not Crash and Burn, Shadow Zone and Meridian both feel like Full Moon if you know Full Moon, but they feel like they could be anybody else as well, you know. And then Puppet Master obviously is Puppet Master, but it's still a very rough cut of what Puppet Master would be. I think with, you know, Crash and Burn, Puppet Master 2, Doll Man, they really set the tone for what they would then perfect, like have absolutely perfected and be able to roll out 2-3 times a year for the rest of the decade, you know. I mean, am I wrong or what?
Yeah, I know. Wait, Transport does seem like so this. So like wait till we have all the action set pieces. We have the gore. We have stop motion creatures, and then full on take cash with the sort of the first 3 films being sort of first time experiments for the franchise, testing themselves in different genres. Whereas Puppet Master, mystery horror, Meridian, drama and romance, and Shadow Zone
Eroticism.
sci-fi.
Yeah, like you said, they you've been saying it since basically our first review. Really, they cast a wide net with those first few movies, you know, just to see what worked. And I think, you know, even though they were probably producing them at the same time, some of Shadow Zone might have informed Crash and Burn. Now that I think about it, I mean, there's a good chance they finished that one before they finished this one, and they looked at it and they were like, okay, this is what really worked about that one, and this is what didn't work as good, you know, because there are a lot of vibes from Shadow Zone that carry over to Crash and Burn too. They make a hell of a double feature, I'll say that much. I mean, and they really are Full Moon's 2 like main sci-fi horror films, right? Like, what did they kind of went more into the fantastical, I don't know if I want to say real world based horror, but they didn't do a ton of post-apocalyptic sort of dystopian future sci-fi horror after Shadow Zone and Crash and Burn, did they, Mikey?
No, I don't think so.
I think the closest they ever did was Horror Vision with that vibe. But in a way, it's called a
Danny
start,
Draven movie,
which is more of the start of an apocalypse than sort of the aftermath of an apocalypse.
Yeah, I would call it more like, what do you call it, like contemporary tech horror or whatever, sort of like Fear.com, where it was like about the technology we're dealing with right now in our actual contemporary times going wrong on us, you know. So yeah, on, like you said, it's on the other end of the spectrum from this stuff. This stuff's more like dystopian future, post-apocalyptic, and Horror Vision is, like you said, like what could lead to that, you know. Terrible movie, by the way. Horror Vision fucking sucks, and we're gonna have to talk about that one of these days. There's some cool elements to Horror Vision that I really like, though, like the weird clockwork fucking critter that they have crawling around killing people, or that giant bone monster looks like a character from Gwar, you know. And it's got that Danny Draven style to it that he would later really figure out for some pretty cool stuff. So, I mean, I don't know. That's quite a ways down the road. Might even be a couple of years before we get to Horror Vision. Hopefully you guys are on board till then, though. I'm having a real good fucking time talking about these movies with you guys. I don't know. I guess let's well, we talked about the performances, the production design. I feel like all the sets feel very lived in. None of them feel like real cheap, like quickly produced horror movie sets. Unfortunately, we would see a lot of that in Full Moon in later years, but this is back. We aren't even into the castle days yet, bro. Like, this is just them doing it old school, like renting sets and refurbishing them. I mean, I'm not for certain that's what they did, but I know enough about B movies, and some of the stuff looks recognizable enough that I feel like that's the case. It was probably a lot of them using existing sets like the power station, a lot of them going and renting sets and refurbishing them a bit, or just using them as is and rearranging them. I know Roger Corman would rent out like sets that he built for a long time. There's a good chance some of this stuff might have came from something like that, and then they just, you know, gave it a new coat of paint or something. And it's glorious, you know. Obviously, we'd get some real good production quality later on when, you know, Charlie owned a fucking castle, but they don't yet, you know, at least not to my knowledge. And they're still making, you know, a quality film here. I think all the sets, all the outdoor shots that establish those sets, everything really works together to make the world feel like lived in and real. I don't know. Do you guys have a particularly favorite set in the film or location? Is there anything else you'd like to add to this?
I think basically kind of like the sort of the main set of this sort of radio TV broadcasts station, mostly sort of how does it and the kind of the sort of the old tech that is still working after all this time. Well, it's sort of the giant wolf just buried in the sand hasn't been active for years.
Yeah, I love that part where Megan Ward's showing him her little hacker station, and she's like, "Yeah, it's all from the '90s." Like, the '90s is super old technology, you know. What about you, Mikey? What do you think of the set design and production design and all this? You know.
I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, like in the desert when robots just laying in the sand, and at one point, Aaron Megan Ward like gets on the computer and wakes it up, and it gets up and just moves around. It's really cool. I think it's really good.
Well, and a good comparison to make within the Full Moon universe is, okay, we all like creepazoids, I'm sure, but if this movie was shot on those like interchangeable storage unit sets that Creepazoids was shot on, it would feel cheap and kind of not good, you know. They clearly put a lot of detail. I mean, you know, a good example of great production design and set design in the film is that fueling station that he stops at the very beginning. I mean, that feels like a gross, way backwoods, like Hills Have Eyes meets Mad Max sort of fueling station that you would run across in a random post-apocalyptic desert, right? Like, it fully feels like a place that you would run into if you were playing the game Fallout nowadays, you know. Like, you could buy that location. God, that would be so fucking cool if you're a programmer on something like Fallout 6 or something, to put the fueling station from Crash and Burn in there as a location. Future nerds that are into Full Moon, look into it. That'd be real cool if someone did something like that. I'm sure it's happened, but yeah, I mean, if you thought of this, if you wanted to see how this movie would suffer without the sets, think about it if they shot it in the same location that they did Creepazoids. The movie could still work in that location. It would just suck, you know, at least on a production design level, you know. Because it's very obvious, as much as I love Creepazoids, that they're running around in a fucking storage unit, you know. There's just no way around it. This feels like these sets were all created for this film, even though I'm sure some of them weren't, and it feels very convincing, at least to me. It adds to the world building that they're doing narratively to make the whole reality of this movie make sense. You feel me? Like, I'm sure we're all familiar with proper world building. We've all watched movies like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Well, if the Hobbit Hall was like a duplex, you probably wouldn't buy the movie, right? Like, everything in this movie feels either real wind blown and rusted out and dusty, or it feels drippy and like humid and hot, you know. And that's the sets themselves, even without anything that's happening on the screen. And that's huge. I think that adds a lot to Crash and Burn overall. Special effects, what do you guys think of those? I mean, you know, we're talking here strictly just the prosthetics, the gore effects, that stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the effects that's pretty good. Good notes, especially with Quinn's makeup when he has to start showing more of his android parts. Almost in a way, it's almost like he's sort of like bleeding on, such as like near the end when his legs get crushed, and he has to whip them all
Love it.
off of that. That's all pretty cool. And of course, there's the stop motion with the giant robot at the end with the final climax, which is pretty cool. Anyway, like I feel like stop motion is so like best used when for like creatures and actually robots themselves in a way. So in a way that you kind of like, or in the way you have to move.
It divorces yourself from the reality of the character. I think I know what you're talking about, because there are movies where like it'll show like a human character, for lack of a better word. Some of them might be vampires, whatever. It'll show like a humanoid character that then for a special effects sequence is a stop motion character. Like, okay, great example in the Full Moon library is Dr. Mordred, where I think it's like that T-Rex picks that guy up, you know, and you go from the regular dude on the ground, like an actual living dude, to a stop motion version of him going up with the dinosaur. And even David Allen couldn't make that look good, you know. So you're 100% correct, Mason. Like, you have to have it be one of the fantastical characters that's moving in stop motion, so that you can divorce yourself from normal physics and frame rates and things, you know, because nothing in stop motion moves right exactly. I'm sure if we all saw a giant mech, like you could build the actual mech from Crash and Burn and have it walk in front of us, and we would be like, I mean, that's cool, but it's not what we expected, you know, because it doesn't look like stop motion, right? Like, that's how we assume monsters like that move, which is hilarious. I'm sure it would be very much more like watching a cruise ship move, where it's like cool for 2 seconds and then you get bored of it. In real life, I mean. Put that thing in stop motion, though, I'll watch it all fucking day. There's just something about that frame rate and the way that it's put together that makes it enjoyable to look at, you know. What do you guys think about the gore effects, the appliances? I didn't hear much from you on that, Mason. I mean, do you think that they look pretty good?
Yeah, the gore was pretty good. Sort of like from Winston Gaines' arm with Darth, especially when his finger gets infected.
It's all infected, yeah. Oh, God, you got to go to urgent care immediately, dude.
Yeah.
We do have time for Dr. Bill. Let's get this looked at. What the fuck? Yeah, it's gnarly, man. And then, I mean, the head into the thing, and the headshot at the end, real chunky and good. I approve of all of it. What do you think, Mikey, on everything we just mentioned?
Well, the effects are really cool. It's like all realistic, and the stop motion animation is really cool. It's like the robot really moves. Like some stop motion animations, it's like a frame and it just moves, but it's not really moving. It's just like frame to frame. But then David Allen, who is a real wizard, made it move like magical. Like it's like really moving, and yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It's like very good, like realistic. I like it.
What about the gore effects? I would say, honestly, best that we've seen so far, too, in terms of just pure practical realism. Like, again, we mentioned the swelling of Winston's hand, stuff like that. I think it's just, you know, we got some gore in the previous films, and I would argue the headshot from Shadow Zone is probably better than the headshot at the end of this, but cumulatively, I think Crash and Burn does a better job, but I'd be curious on your opinion, man.
Yeah, the blood effect's really cool. It's like real blood. It's realistic. Like with Winston, he gets his fingers cut, then it swells, and then Quinn comes in and just rips it off, rips his arm off, and throws him on the light, and the blood is all over him, and it's really good that way.
I also think there's something to be said about how much of it they show in this movie, okay? Because, let it be known, this movie isn't like splatterific or anything. We made a big what to do about these scenes because they're like effectively executed, you know? But the movie isn't over the top gory. It also doesn't pull the punches that Shadow Zone seemed to pull. I mean, you guys notice that watching them back to back right now? Like, Shadow Zone kind of skimped on some of the stuff, and all of us pretty much pointed that out when we watched it, you know. But when you get to Crash and Burn, it doesn't feel like they skimped on any of these scenes. Like, it feels like they gave us enough for it to be viscerally satisfying, but didn't show us too much of it so as to make it like feel cheap or gratuitous, you know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I can see what you come from. Like the gore effects are actually more on kills on screen. We actually see like how they die aside from just off screen sounds of people in pain or blood being splattered to a wall.
I mean, dude, they could have taken the fucking shower electrocution off screen, and I don't think any of us would be complaining other than the lack of tits in the movie. But yeah, I mean, it just feels like we got a satisfying portrayal of everything that we wanted to see in the film. I don't know. What do you think, Mikey? You think they could have done with some more gore?
Yeah, they could have done some more gore. They could have done some kills like cutting up and everything. Yeah, and more blood would have been squirted, more that would have been shown. Yeah, I would have to say that.
I think the only area where I think it lacked is that shower scene, as we discussed. And you guys, I think one of you guys mentioned, like, just shoving her onto the fucking, like, classic slasher style, just impaling her on the shower head. Or crushing her face against the wall, I think one of you guys mentioned, too. Either of those would have been sick and would have definitely added to the fucking movie. But I think the other scenes that they showed were adequately portrayed. One of the scenes that unnerves me the most is where she stabs him in the face with that hair pick, and then he just pulls it out, and it's all during that whole insane sequence where he gives one of the best speeches in horror movie history. It really is one of the best speeches in horror movie history, too. We didn't really give it its flowers that it deserves when we were talking about it. We all said it was awesome. But really, it's so fucking crazy, that Bill Moseley speech in Crash and Burn. It's one of the best moments of his career, you know? So it's no wonder that he was willing to go back and do more stuff with Charlie Band, because... I mean, okay, you can argue Chop Top is Bill Moseley's, like, defining moment for his early career. And you would be right in saying that the Rob Zombie stuff is the pinnacle of his career. But I think Crash and Burn kind of defines the evolution from Chop Top to whatever his fucking name was in House of a Thousand Corpses. I keep forgetting the character name, but I mean, you know, Quinn is kind of the middle ground between Chop Top and Rob Zombie. You know, not just because it's the thing we know him from in that time period, but in terms of performance. You know, you look at this, there's a little Chop Top in there, but that's just because we are reminded of Chop Top by him, right? The Chop Top that's in there is very subtle. There's more of an intelligent, psychotic drive to the character in Crash and Burn, you know, which is just amplified, like turned up to 11 Spinal Tap style with his character in the Rob Zombie movies, you know. Like, he's ultra fucking intelligent, but also equally sadistic. And that's what makes him scary in those, you know. So I think there's something to be said there too, but man, that's probably one of my favorite effects of the movie. I do think that the stop motion is tragically brief, but we've all touched on that tonight. What do you guys think about the cinematography, just the way the movie was shot?
I personally think the cinematography itself was pretty good. Like it's good in like it's a lot like wider group shots you use like so that did like dinner table scene when they had to do the whole testing for the night to see who is the android. Like almost like giving us how much time in the audience kind of predict who's actually the killer amongst them. It puts this so like the close up shots and the lighting is itself was really good, kind of care with that sort of old but still operating and feel to the sort of station.
What about you, Mikey?
I think the cinematography is like really good because they show the way like at the table. They cut each other's fingers and see who is the android. They show it really well, and with the robot and everything, yeah, it's really good.
I think Mac Alberg, I mean, especially on this, but I feel like also in Shadow Zone, you see little shades of it. The dude knows how to like shoot close stuff in a way that doesn't make it feel like cramped or claustrophobic, but makes it feel like warm and almost intimate when he's shooting stuff in like close proximity. And then he also really knows how to shoot like the exterior scenes in a way that makes it feel somehow even more remote than it actually is, you know. With Shadow Zone, you particularly get it where they're flying in at the beginning, and then when they're going down into it, like all the only really, that's actually kind of weird when you think about it. There's only like those 3 minutes of footage in Shadow Zone that's actually above ground. It might be maybe tied with like The Descent for the movie that spends the most time underground, you know. Because really it's just him getting picked up by Shivers in the truck in Shadow Zone, and then they're underground for the rest of the movie. It's nuts. We'd have to actually look at that movie and The Descent and time the run times of them to see which one comes close, and I'd wager it's fucking neck and neck, man. But, you know, even in that brief moment in Shadow Zone, he manages to make it feel like they're truly meeting in the middle of nowhere. And that's not easy to shoot, even in a location that seems like it's in the middle of nowhere, you know, or is in the middle of nowhere. There's talent that comes into that, you know. That power substation that he shot for this is probably not that far away from stuff that would easily mark it out as being in the middle of civilization. But Mac Alberg somehow found a way to shoot the shit in a way that made you feel like they were 40 miles away from the nearest thing, you know. And I think that's pretty fucking cool. And I do like his use of close-ups. I think that Mac Alberg knows how to use them sparingly to tell the story, but without using them as a substitute for good cinematography. Some of the stuff is just shown like in a wide shot because he knows he can shoot it well. I'll also say this is one of those movies that kind of calls into question the validity of all these movies that are shot nowadays, where you can't hardly see anything that's fucking going on because the movie's so dark. How the hell was Mac Alberg shooting this stuff and then having it transferred to VHS in the early fucking 90s and we can still see everything that's happening in the dark shots? Like, I don't get it. Somehow he was able to do lighting in a way for Full Moon, of all people, that's like a million times better than Alien versus Predator fucking Requiem. You know, like, how the fuck are we not doing Mac Alberg dark scenes in every movie? Because it feels dark, you know what I mean? And looks dark, but you can actually see what's fucking happening. And this was this dude doing it in the fucking early 90s. Imagine if Mac Alberg shot Alien versus Predator Requiem or whatever. We might actually fucking like the movie. Because the movie itself looked like it was pretty cool, the stuff that you could see. But the the rest of it is, what the fuck's happening here? I watched this movie at my girlfriend's house with her TV that I later learned was on power saving mode, so it was even darker than normal, and I could still see all of Mac's stuff. I don't get it. I don't understand how like shooting dark scenes is so hard for all these people. I've never done it myself, so I don't understand the shit, the trials and tribulations of doing it. But if Mac Alberg can do it in the fucking early 90s for a full moon production, I feel like other people should be able to pull it off. I don't know. Am I the only one who feels strongly about this? You guys ever ran into those modern horror films where it's like, I'd love this if I could see what was happening,
I think I seen like a full sort of handful of them came up towards, but yeah, those kinds of films are like it's too dark to actually like see what's going on.
I mean, what's the fucking point? I'm just sitting here listening to people make sounds or creature effect. It's fucking lame, dude. And you watch something like this or Shadow Zone, and it's like, well, there you go. It can be done, and somehow this low budget guy is doing it in the early 90s with way crappier cameras. Go ahead, Mikey. Sorry.
Yeah, same thing with me. Like, I saw a couple movies. Like, I watched the VHS of it. It's like it's like really good. It's good looking. But then when I watch the DVD version, it's like dark. Like you can't see anything. All you do is hear people talk, and you just see one or two things, and that's it. Like, what am I supposed to see? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I just see a dark picture. I mean,
if I want to look at a black screen, I'll turn the fucking TV off. Like it's nuts, dude. And you can't blame it on like color correction or post effects, or a lot of it's the dude that shot it, and then there's a lot of stuff in modern horror films that is not focused or composed in a way that I'm used to. I won't say correctly, because that makes me sound like I'm trying to determine based on my own taste what the way to shoot a movie is. I prefer Mac Alberg shooting. Let this dude shoot everything, at least for genre films like sci-fi and horror. I think Mac Alberg has it nailed. It's also very slow and methodical when it needs to be. He knew when to take his time just panning across the scene, and then he knew when to get right into the action. When to shoot something in a way that made it feel exciting, and when to shoot something in a way that made it almost like calming, and that's something that, needs to be said about Mac Alberg. I mean, that's all that dude. That's not Charlie Band. That's not the special effects people. The thing that gives this movie that sort of like fun sleepover warm vibe, I mean, it is all those things, but a predominant element of it is the way that it's shot, and that's all Mac Alberg, baby. Dude's a fucking legend. We all know this, but more people need to. What do you guys think about the music? It's our final production note before we get into favorite characters, favorite scenes, and close this out. What do you think about that score, Mason?
I think the music itself is pretty good. It kind of keeps it the creepy yet sort of apocalyptic atmosphere, and also sort of an action sort of theme to it. Also, by the end, kind of gives like a solid sign of hope that with this sort of the resistance that lives on with these sort of cyborgs running around.
I love that you picked up on all that, dude. My exact notes are warm and creepy in equal measure, gloomy when it needs to be, mysterious when it needs to be, hopeful when it needs to be. There's even scenes where like it's got that heat infused into the soundtrack too, a little bit like those dreamy synth lines at a couple of parts. They remind me almost of that movie, like the intro to the movie Manhunter, where he's like on that Florida beach and he's just hanging out in like his beach house, and there's those cool neon lights playing in through the windows, and it's like this synthy, saxy kind of vibe as it's looking out across the ocean. Like, basically, it's got like sweaty 80s Florida beach vibes at points, with neon lighting. I don't know if there's probably an easier way for me to say that, and I'll come up with it one day. But, this soundtrack really hits all the marks, It's as much of a character in the movie, in my opinion, as the set design and the robot and Megan Ward or whoever else, It adds that atmosphere. That I think was present in all the Full Moon movies up to this point. Shadow Zone was probably the most lacking. I mean, I think we all basically agreed that the soundtrack was okay for Shadow Zone. I'd go on record as saying Crash and Burn is one of their more phenomenal soundtracks, especially from Richard Band for the time period, And just listening to it, it's got a lo-fi quality too, where you can tell Richard used some real budget shit to make this soundtrack, and it still rules. What do you think, Mikey? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead of you there, but man, I love the soundtrack.
That's all right. Yeah, I think the soundtrack of Crash and Burn's really good. Like, the music's like slow, it's like hot, it goes the desert in the beginning, and Tyson Keen's riding the motorcycle. And the music changes, like, it gets more like hopeful, and it gets more mysterious with most Quinn turning into the android, but then it gets adventurous with the robot waking up in the end. It's really, really good. I like
it. Yeah, I think it's maybe not his most technically proficient one, because he was using clearly like, some weird MIDI early 90s. I don't know enough music synthy stuff to know what I'm talking about when it comes to that, but he was using some definitely not what Richard Band would prefer to be using equipment to make Crash and Burn, and it still turned out to be a hell of a fucking soundtrack. So I mean, I don't know if I'd rank it in like my top 5, but it's definitely a notable Full Moon movie where you're like, soundtrack rules also when you're telling people about it, And not all of them are like that. I mean, when I think of Full Moon movies that I make a point to point out the soundtrack, it's sort of like Crash and Burn, Bad Channels is an obvious choice, Netherworld, those are ones that they really stand out to me, where it's like kind of like The Burning or, Demons or, Dawn of the Dead, any of those movie scores that you're like, those are sick, I'd put Netherworld up there with any of them. I think it's an amazing score. So, and this is maybe not not top 5 for Full Moon, but it's still a notable score. So that's it for music. I guess we'll do favorite characters, favorite scenes, then close this thing out. Starting with you, Mason, who's your favorite character in the movie, and what's your favorite scene?
I think it's my favorite character has to be Quinn. Just this sort of nice guy that turned out to be a cyborg, and it's basically my favorite scene. Basically, the climax with the giant robot.
Very cool, dude. Both great choices. What about you, Mikey?
Quinn is my favorite character as well, because I like the way he starts. He starts as a nice guy, and he's very helpful. And at one point, he turns around and he's the bad guy, and he starts killing everybody. And and it's really good, really interesting. Like, the one guy is normal, then turns into the evil one later on. That's really cool. It's like a change. I like that.
Yeah, why not? Whoops. My favorite character in the film is definitely Megan Ward's character. But, she's honestly, I think it's like just her and Tyson as a combo. I really love them in this movie. I think it's adorable. I think the way he plays against her is really cool too. Because again, in any number of 80s or 90s movies, they could have made this creepy and weird. Like, even on accident, even if they weren't trying to. But they don't in Crash and Burn, and I think that's pretty cool. And a pretty good sign that, Charles Band was ahead of his times in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I guess I'm going to cheat. It would be Aaron and Tyson as my tied favorite characters in the movie. Favorite scene, it's just got to be that Winston Wicket arm rip, man. It's just so brutal and abrupt, and the hand scene with it being infected, building up to it, just makes it pack such a punch. And then when he slams his fucking skull into that light fixture at the end, it's just wow. Yeah. That definitely could be the most brutal kill scene in a full moon movie, maybe. It's definitely in the top 5, if it's not, and we'll find out because we're going to keep trucking through these. My favorite scene that's not any of that kind of stuff, and I guess I'll get one of these from each of you guys as well, but my favorite like non-kill, non-character scene, I guess, or whatever, is probably just that first dinner scene where they're all sitting down at the table and like bantering, It adds like such a cool feeling of familiarity to all the characters in the movie and really makes them feel like real people, if that makes sense. There's really no purpose to the scene. They all just kind of eat dinner and talk a little bit of shit to each other and, converse and then go to bed. But it adds a lot to the movie, I think. What would be your favorite scene like that, Mason?
Well, basically, I think kind of think my favorite scene. See, mostly because same setting is basically the scene with them interrogating each other with the knife. Just mostly show the mystery and how it kind of plays around with sort of the twist of who the android really is.
Right, and I love that you picked that one because it really is the scene that kind of hammers home the chemistry I was talking about, where it puts them in a tense situation together and makes them play basically the same scene, but with scalpels, blood, and tension. What about you, Mikey?
Same thing here. Favorite is non-kill scene is the dinner scene. Yeah, they're sitting at their table and cutting their fingers to see who's really the android, the symphoid, the killer. Yeah, and they all get together like the way they all get together and testing everybody out to see who the killer is. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say that. Yes.
I would go as far as with that scene to say too that it's definitely a blatant ripoff of the scene from The Thing. I mean, there's no two ways around that. But B, it also really works for the movie because you never know when they're doing that scene where they're ripping off the Thing with the test, if it's going to have someone actually be the Thing and freak out, or if it's going to have nothing, And I think this was early enough. I mean, this is like 1990. The Thing only came out 8 years earlier. There couldn't have been that many movies that replicated that scene. I think the scene in Crash and Burn works because you're like, oh man, one of these people is going to be revealed to be the fucking creature basically and have to freak out right now. And then when it doesn't happen, there's that brief moment where you're like, well, maybe she's wrong. Maybe they snuck someone else in here. Maybe it's the old man, I remember thinking that the first time I watched Crash and Burn, like maybe the old man was killed by one of these people that knew that he was the robot. And it's really him shambling around it. I mean, it casts that moment of doubt pretty effectively, where you're like, oh, maybe it isn't any of these people that we've been seeing then. Maybe there's someone else here that's going to be revealed to be it. Or maybe it's Megan Ward herself, and she doesn't even know it. So it works for the movie, So basically what I'm saying is it's an effective homage to The Thing while also being its own kind of thing, and that's pretty fucking cool. So that kind of does it for Crash and Burn. I mean, do you guys have any final thoughts on this maybe you want to share? Mason?
I think I'm covered all my bases for the film.
What about you, Mikey?
It's really good movie, really good film. It's sort of adventurous, especially when the robot comes to life. It's really good.
Yeah, same.
I think my final thoughts on the film kind of echo the final thoughts I've had for the last 3 episodes that we've done, which is that that they're all like great and show a lot of promise, as we've covered extensively. I think this is where they finally hit their stride. Much like Shadow Zone, and not much like the first two Full Moon movies. I would say that this and Shadow Zone are those first two that you can say not only are they good Full Moon movies, but they're those types of movies that you would recommend to a friend that's not even into Full Moon. Like maybe you know somebody that isn't affiliated with it at all, or I know people that don't like the bulk of the Full Moon stuff because what they're familiar with is like Puppet Master and Evil Bong and Killjoy and shit like that. So you know, basically this is one of those movies, and really the first one that you can confidently recommend to non Full Moon horror fans. If they haven't seen it, they're probably gonna like it, you know. This and Shadow Zone are kind of those. And then obviously after this we go into Puppet Master again and Doll Man, and it gets much more Full Moon again. But this is that perfect middle ground movie right here for me with Crash and Burn. Like, it's Full Moon, but it's also not Full Moon enough that somebody who might like Castle Freak or The Pit and the Pendulum, but not like Puppet Master and all the other shit, would like this, you know. So give it a look. If you haven't seen Crash and Burn, we've spoiled most of the plot points of it for you. I imagine you have seen it, but you know, those of you that have seen it too, get out there and do exactly what I just said. Recommend it to your friends. Get them watching this shit. You guys have anything you're involved with you want to plug before we head out here? You make any recent videos, Mason? You doing any video shoots? Going to any events?
Nothing. Yeah. Really died. I mean, I'm like I said, I have my own YouTube channel. I am thinking like plan like one day kind of making like a little series centered around like a character I made with sort of a film around a film party called Dr. Mind Drain, with just this mad scientist doing these little vlogs, kind of posted like the first on YouTube. You guys saw that I actually well, me reanimating like which actually just a stuffed animal, little dinosaur thing, and I in a way kind of put up some nods for when it sell. Like I have like a Killer Eye replica in the background of the video as well,
yeah.
like the little laser blast alien on it in sort of a like a glass cup upside down. Heck, one more. I actually have like an actual movie prop that I use in the video. So yeah, pretty cool.
Oh yeah, man. Well, get me your link and we'll pin it in the comments, and we'll send some people over there. What about you, Mikey? You got anything going on? You make any recent videos?
Well, I got my Halloween video coming up. Saying Happy Halloween 2023. I make a Halloween video every year, and I just ordered those Full Moon Tiny Terrors, a whole case, and I'm gonna have 2 long-term official videos, and I'm gonna have a short video, like a 60-second short with each Tiny Terror, starting with well, the first one I hope I get is Blade when I open them up. And that's my plan, and that's gonna be my upcoming videos.
You know what you should consider doing, if not this year, then next year, is like a video for Halloween night that's you recommending like a triple feature of Full Moon movies that you think best sort of exemplify the Halloween spirit. Full Moon's one of those odd, I mean, I'm trying to think of movies that specifically scream Halloween to me with Full Moon. I don't know that there's, I'd have to really think about it, you know. There's other movies that are so much obvious, like, you know, Children of the Corn or Trick or Treat, or there's like a billion movies that are like Monster Squad, like that Ernest Scared Stupid, that obviously lend themselves to Halloween, right? But for Full Moon, I don't know what I would do. I mean, I know The Creeps would be on my list.
Well, there's also Ouija's, the the Killer Eye sequel called Killer Eye 2 Halloween Haunt. That's a
There you go.
Dollman vs. Demonic Toys actually takes place on Halloween night.
Witch House has good Halloween vibes.
Yeah, in Witch House.
We could do it. We could put together the lists, but I'd be curious to hear Mikey's list of like ones that he thinks are the best full moon Halloween movies. So if you find some time to throw out a quick Halloween triple feature list, and that could be a thing for you every year, dude, because really full moon movies are usually like an hour to an hour and 20 minutes. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
they're-
Like Mason said, I'll have to say Ouija's, of course, Witch House, and Tommy vs. Demonic Toys, and regular Demonic Toys. They got that scene when the kids dress up as Halloween, and the Demon Child is
Yeah, they
is
literally
born, and,
get
the
it
demon
in
is
that movie.
born dead. Yeah, that's his Halloween scene. Yeah, I'll have to say that. Yeah.
Well, fuck, maybe if we're still doing this next Halloween, let's do a proper full moon Halloween special then. We'll all come dressed up as full moon characters. You don't have to do anything, Mike. You have the easiest job of all. You're already dressed up as a full moon character, but we could figure it out, Mason. You'd make a good Pinhead, I feel like. Both of us would. I'll be Pinhead.
I mean, I actually dressed as some kid for Halloween. Like one time I dressed up as Blade back when I was like 10, and one time I dressed up as Torch. That was like a sort of a custom costume.
Dude, I don't know why you as Torch sounds like it would make me laugh so fucking hard. So I think I'll be Pinhead, you'll be Torch. He could be. Dude, I might be able to get Cody to dress up as Leech Woman. That would be fucking hilarious, dude. And he would be down for it. So we'll see what we can do. I guess really what this turned into right now is the genesis of the Nocturnal Emissions Halloween special. So look forward to that next year. We didn't have enough time this year to really build one up. We're just starting the show, but I think we're off to a good fucking start, right, boys?
Yes, I think so.
All right, so join us next weekend for Puppet Master 2. They're back, no strings attached. I have been Mosley. We have been Nocturnal Emissions, as presented by the Full Moon fucking, the Schlockaholics YouTube channel. And that is Jester Mikey's torch that he'll be showing off. We also got another torch up there. I don't have one on hand, unfortunately, so I'll just do this. Cheers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys back here in the very near future.